Okay, hi. I'm going to talk about arrays today, and this is going to be a bit of a review, but I thought it would be worthwhile to go through a review before I give you a quiz later on in the week. So I'm going to start right from the beginning. Memory boxes, don't want you to forget what they look like, and declaring versus initializing. So number one here shows you string array bugs. But when I say array, I'm looking at the two square brackets. That's your declaration. So really, that's a reference. So there's a reference to the space where you would have your actual values for your array. If you want to store values, you need the equal sign. And in this case, new string array with a 5 in the square brackets, that sets up, it allocates space for 5 string values. Now this 5 in the brackets here tells you that you're going to need space for 5 values, and it sets up a hard 5 values. You can't add to that. And if you don't use up all the space, that's fine. It's still going to have 5 spaces. But you can't change after. In fact, you can't change with arrays no matter how you set it up. Um, you could do both of those things on the same line at one time, declare and initialize. So if we look at what we had the previous screen, on one line of code, you could say you have your string array called list, and that equals a new string of 5. So here it sets up your reference to your array, and it allocates space for 5 items. And the default value for strings is null. You could also say that you want fly, moth, mite, flea, and ant values stored, and from that, it realizes that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different values, and it will set up or it'll allocate the space for those 5 values and initialize with those values. Okay, so null isn't even part of that. How to access one value? If we look system.out.println bugs and then 2, and bugs is a reference to this array with fly, moth, mite, flea, and ant in it, 2, index 2 takes you to the third item, and that would be the only thing printed out, just might. If, on the other hand, we want to change a value, not print it out, we would go to the array name and then whatever index, which value in our array that we want to change. So in this case, 0, and which used to be fly. If we look back here, at 0 we had fly, but now we can say 0, bug 0 equals beetle, and we can replace fly with beetle, and fly is gone. Okay. Looking through our loop, or looking through all the values, we almost always use a for loop. And if you look at the structure of the for loop, I keep using int I equals 0. I almost always start my for loops like that. Why do I use the letter I? Because it's short for index. Because for loops and arrays or lists of items, in order to access a specific item in a list, you have to know the index to it. And so I is short for index, and that's why I always use I. So in this case, you're going to keep going in your loop as long as I is less than bugs.length. So 5 for indices 0 to 4. As long as it's less than 5, you know you're still in the array. And we're going to go I++. So we're going to go one at a time. What are we doing? We're going to print them out. Bugs I. The other kind of really cool loop that you could use is a for each loop. And if you look at a for each loop, the index is hidden. You know it has to be there because somehow the computer compiler and interpreter have to keep track of where you are in your list, but you don't see the identifier for any counter anywhere. So how's it made up? How do we do a for each loop? There's 2 sections. The first section is a variable declaration. It says string name. String is the type of thing you're going to find in this array. So names is a string array. And name is our new variable that we're declaring to store each individual item in as we go through our array. What's the name of our array? Names. So somewhere there has to be an array declared with the identifier names. And we're going to go through that array one at a time, looking at each value and storing that value in this variable name right here called name, and we're going to print it out. Very cool. Very easy way to do it, but there's no index. All right, so let's see. Do you understand what I've been talking about? Do you get it? Do you get arrays? If we look at the code on the left here, it says string array bugs, and again, we've got fly, moth, mite, flea, and ant. And I want to print out bugs at 2 plus 2. Okay, so it's going to say what's in the quotes exactly the way it is first, and then we're going to concatenate bugs, and then in the square brackets, 2 plus 2. In the square brackets, we have to have an index, so we have to count. We have to actually add and do 2 plus 2 to get 4, and then find index 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We should print out ant. Next, bugs.length minus 2. Well, what's the length of bugs? How many are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the length is 5. Subtract 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. And we're going to go to index 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. That's where flea is currently sitting. And we're going to replace that with spider. So then when we go through our for each loop for bugs, and we print out each item, we should get fly, moth, mite, not flea, because we replaced that with spider. So spider, and then ant. Down here we have a print line, so we should get a blank line printed out. And we're declaring a new variable. This is not a new variable, a new array, which we have an identifier for our array called nums. And not strangely, but we will find numbers in our array, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So if we look at printing different things out, what's in green will be printed identically. But then what do each of those identifiers get us to? So nums 1 plus 2, I think you guys already know the answer to that. I'm going to let you stop the video right now and take a look and see if you can figure out what each of those things will do, because in a second, I'm going to go to the next screen. You'll see all the answers. So you want to think of it first, go through each of these, see if you understand them, see if you know the answers before you start the video up and see the answers. Okay, so stop the video now. All right, we're back. Hopefully you did what you're supposed to do. All right, I'm going to just point out a couple things here because there may be some surprises on the screen. I would imagine you got most of them. But what's this nums? It says nums I at, an at symbol, 681A 9515. What's that? It's actually a hexadecimal number. That number is an address location of where you're going to find the array. So I stands for integer because there are integers in this array. Where do you find the array? You find it at memory location 681A9515. And if we go back and look here, you can see that the pointer that we see where bugs is, the identifier bugs, that pointer is actually an address. So when I talk about something called a reference, or I call something a pointer, you have to realize that I'm talking about an address location. Bugs is an array, and the array is stored at location wherever that pointer is going. Okay, so back to here. All right. So hopefully you understand now when it says plus nums, nums is the pointer. It is the reference. It's not any of the values at all. if you want to get to any of the values, and each of the values has its own index, you have to refer to it by that index. You can't refer to a whole clump of them at once. Now, the last two print lines are very interesting as well. The only difference is that the second to last has brackets around the num0 plus 3, where the last one has num0 plus 3. So that plus sign could be concatenate strings together, join them, or it could be add numbers together, but it's not both. It's one or the other. Either we're concatenating by joining two strings, or we're going to add two numbers to get a brand new number. So in the first case, so the second to last one, with the brackets, we're going to num0, which is the number 2, and we're adding 3. So 2 plus 3 is 5, and you can see that we got 5 in the output. But the last one, there are no brackets. So you can't add this string that I have at the beginning with num0. You can't do it. So you have to interpret num0, which is that 2, as a string value and concatenate it. So we have the 2 printed on its own next to a 3, which is concatenated and not added. If you have any trouble with any of this, shoot me an email and I can maybe explain it a little bit better to you, or just come on to the Google Meet next Monday and we'll talk about it. Okay, this last exercise here, I could give it to you to do on your own, but I think you've got a lot to do already with the adventure game, so we'll go through this together. Okay, so I'm going to bring up JGrasp, and first thing it says to do is write a program to create two strings. Okay, so here's two strings. We've got first names, we've got last names, and I put some names in both. And if I drag this over a bit, it doesn't want to drag over. There we go. Okay, now you can see it all. All right, so we've got two string arrays, and they have the same number of items in each one because I want the last name and the first name to match up. So index 0 of first names, Eric, is the first name to index 0 last names, Smith. So Eric Smith. Now create a loop to go through all values of the first name array, and if the name is Karen, then make the last name Cogswell, because we don't care about any other Karens. All right, so let's print out first using a for each loop because that's cool. What our last names look like. So we'll get Smith, Cogswell, Valentine, Rockwell. All right, we're going to print them out, and then we're going to set up a for loop. But you know what? I'm not using a for each loop this time. Why not? Well, I need to have my index. When I find Karen, I want to use the same index value so I can access the last name in the other array and change it to Cogswell. So here, as I'm going through checking to see if my string value equals Karen, I'm going to change all the last names that match up to Cogswell. Okay. By the way, why am I using dot equals and not equals equals? Because equals equals works with char values. It works with ints and numbers, other numbers like doubles. Also works with true false values, but it doesn't work with strings. We have to use the string method dot equals. Why? Because of that first reference, that memory box that points to the value. We don't want to compare that memory box that tells us where a value is. We want to compare the actual value that's stored. Okay, so that's why we have to use dot equals. Okay, so let's print things out again using our fancy schmancy for each loop and see if we actually changed the value of Ballantine to Cogswell. All right, so does it compile? Let's see. Yay, it does. And what does it look like when we run it? Before we get Smith, Cogswell, Ballantine, Rockwell, when we're done going through changing last names to Cogswell, if we see Karen, we get Smith, Cogswell, Cogswell, Rockwell. So yay, worked. Okay, so hope you understand everything. Hope you know how to access array values. I hope you know how to traverse through the array values and expect to see a quiz come up in the next while. But Wednesday, you already have something due. So we'll get to this probably Friday. Okay, good luck.